Morning, everybody. I'm Jo Keats from Dorset Community Action, and today, along with your lovely selves from all sorts of different village halls, we've also got Deborah Clark from ACRE, Bernard from Hallmaster, and Bozina from Allied Westminster, where everybody's still coming in. All your pictures are moving all over the place, so I think I know where you all are, but then you move. It's quite an amazing amount of people here again. I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Now, for some reason, I have got all the bits and pieces that I don't want. Unfortunately, I seem to have all the, oh, no, it's going, right, okay. So as Paula said earlier, if you can stay on mute, please, particularly when it comes to the panel questions, because there are quite a few to get through. Now, we asked you to ask the questions when you were booking on. So what I've done is amalgamated some of the questions together because they related to the same thing, for example, space, capacity, that type of thing. And then there are other questions that are quite unique. But you should find also that some of the questions you have asked, I will be answering as I go through the updates. Okay, so today I'm going to give you an overview of the updated ACRE guidance and some government guidance updates. We're also really keen to find out how you're getting on. Did you open? And are you finding, as you're trying to reopen, that you might need some resources that perhaps we haven't thought of yet? We'd also really like to hear how you're getting on, because your experiences teach us how it is to open a hall. We're sat here in our sort of our back offices giving you the guidance, but we're not there on the ground physically thinking that doorknob needs to be done, that windowsill needs to be washed, because every single village hall is different. So it's your own experiences that will tell us to be able to help other people. And then of course at the end, the lovely Anita is going to do the update on funding. And if there is any time left, Paula might say a few words as well. But that really depends on how we get on with the rest of the webinar today. So, risk assessments. I'm sure you've heard more than you like to sort of know about risk assessments over the last few months. But I just want to read this out to you because this is really, really important. A risk assessment is not about creating huge amounts of paperwork, but rather about identifying sensible measures to control the risks in your workplace. So it goes back to the old common sense values, really. Sort of looking, it is very confusing with the different things that the government have put out, but certainly when it comes to cleaning, it is actually fairly easy to do a walkthrough of your premises to work out how you can operate a one-way system, for example, which things need cleaning more, what you can close down to make life easier for yourself. And as I said earlier, we love sharing information and photos and videos, showing any activities that you have managed to do so far. And the more photos and videos of activities we see going on, I think it will actually encourage those that are slightly more worried about reopening, because they'll see other people doing it and thinking, oh, well, actually, that's gone to plan, that's worked well, perhaps we'll have a go. So your focus has got to be, when you're doing your risk assessments, and I'm probably going through sort of old things here, but the 5 COVID-19 secure guidelines. Minimize contact with individuals who are unwell. So nobody should be coming if they've got any of the COVID-19 symptoms to your hall. Wash your hands often. And my goodness, hasn't this become a mantra? If you're not washing your hands with soapy water, you're sanitizing it with the old alcoholic gel. Make sure, as a hall, that you have got sanitizer or soap and water at your entry and exit points. And you must make sure that you've got running water for the soap, paper towels or hot air dryers in toilets and kitchens. There was a thing about hot air dryers being banned at one point, but they've decided that actually the risk is very, very low, so they can be used. Make sure you don't touch your mouth, eyes and nose. Even if you've got a mask on, avoid trying to fiddle around with the mask, because actually that defeats the object of wearing it. And the old catch it, bin it, kill it posters are available for tissues. And then remembering that if you've blown your nose into a tissue, you must wash your hands afterwards. And then the good old regular cleaning of lots of surfaces, things like door handles, handrails, tabletops, sinks, toilet areas. And you can use normal domestic products. You don't have to go out and buy special antiviral products. Then we've got the old social distancing. So at the moment, we're on the 2 meters or 3 steps to be maintained between individuals and groups of up to 2 households where possible, or the 1 meter plus. Bookings can be accepted for events where social distancing is going to be maintained and contacts below 2 meters are minimized and transitory. So what we mean by that is if you do have to go below the 2 meters, it's going to be in an area, for example, where you're passing through a doorway or you're going through a passageway to get to the loo, for example. Government guidance for community facilities has been further updated, you'll be glad to know. So that's things like guidance. Hello?
1, 2, 3.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. No, I shall carry on. Okay. The government guidance for community facilities have been further updated. So that's for things like guidance on rehearsal and training, which the Wiggle Valley players will be glad to hear about. Making sure that you've got the records, so maintaining your records of visitors to support the NHS test and trace. And I think that's going to be so, so important as time goes on. And it's something that we really need to get used to doing. And then the guidance to phased return of outdoor sport and recreation. And then there's face coverings. So I don't know how many of you have been to a shop since the face coverings came in on the 24th of July. It applies to shops and supermarkets, but not normally to village and community halls unless you have community shops, post offices, indoor markets, and areas where you need to move to access the toilets in the village halls. And of course, children that are under 3 and children that are under 11 don't have to wear them. And if you're using a community cafe, once you've sat down at the table and you're drinking your coffee and having your cake, it's not practical to wear your mask, so you don't need to wear one then. The recreation and leisure and social gatherings says that people attending activities should stay in their household groups when there and keep their social interactions within the household group. So they shouldn't try and engage in conversation with anyone outside that group. And at the moment, the household groups are still no more than 2 households of up to 6 people from different households if outdoors. So if you were going to bingo, for example, 2 single friends living alone could sit together. And outdoors, 3 couples or 6 teenagers could do so. I have to say teenagers, looking at the various parks around me, have completely lost the idea of doing any form of social distancing. But I guess it is hard, and the same with children. It's very difficult to get them to socially distance as well. Clubs or groups that use community facilities can start to meet again, and facility managers should follow the COVID secure guidelines, which is the 5 things about cleaning and social distancing. Then we've got the things about the 30 people. Can it be more than 30 people? Can it be less than 30 people? If your premises is COVID secure And you will be able, you then can hold more than 30 people, subject to your own capacity limits. But you must remember that any individual groups can't interact with other people outside the group they're attending the venue with. So it's the good old in a group no larger than 2 households or 6 people if outside. We want to see people going back to their community centres and using social clubs and starting to interact again. But you still have to remember the fact that you've got your bubbles and you've got to remember the numbers and not facilitate large gatherings or celebrations. If you look on the reopening information sheet, this is all in section 2.2. So performance activity, this is for the Wriggle Valley players particularly, because they did ask this question. They wanted to know, theatre groups, can they be allowed to open? Can they be allowed to rehearse again in the village hall, the juniors and the adults? Well, from the 11th of July, stage 3 applies. So stage 1 was rehearsal and training, but no audiences. Stage 2 was performances for broadcast and recording purposes. So for example, radio, that type of thing. Stage 3, which is where we're at now, performances outdoors with an audience. And there are pilots going on for indoor performances with a limited socially distanced audience. They've done 2 of those in London. They're waiting for the 3rd one to be done at the moment. So stage 4 will be performances allowed indoors and outdoors, but again with a limited audience. And then stage 5 will be the same, but with a larger audience. So what are performers? They are musicians, dancers, actors, technical and operational teams, and that's amateurs and professionals. I haven't seen anything to say whether children have to rehearse separately to adults, and I don't know if anybody else knows anything about that. From the 25th of July, dancing classes can reopen. So you'll be pleased to know that things like if you've already started, yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, that type of thing can reopen. If you are in a band, singing and playing wind and brass instruments can only be performing in the presence of an audience by professionals. So if you're an amateur, unfortunately, you can't play in public at the moment. Indoor performances such as drama, comedy and music aren't allowed to go in front of a live audience at the moment, but can take place outdoors. And we have got a couple of touring forums in Dorset, so if they so wished, they could actually do their performances outside. Children's birthday parties, well, again, you've still got the number of 30 for celebration events. But perhaps if the children are quite challenging to manage because you're concerned about the social distancing, then perhaps you might want to lower the capacity that you have. With smaller numbers, it would be easier for parents and carers to manage the social distancing and hand washing. And you probably would want to have games that are slightly easier to manage so that everyone stays COVID secure. And there's a lot about garden parties, children's parties on the update. Indoor and outdoor sport. From the 11th of July, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've seen quite a lot of cricket being played on various greens. So people have taken advantage of that and they've got going again in their cricket whites. And then from the 25th of July, indoor gyms, fitness and dance studios and indoor sports facilities will be able to open. And I certainly know that one of my colleagues has taken advantage of this and is now paying the price for having worked in the gym. Apparently she's aching all over and is finding it quite difficult to move at the moment after sort of 4 months of not being able to go to the gym. So the activities that would be held in those sorts of venues, such as yoga and Pilates, badminton, table tennis, indoor bowls, can also now be held in village and community halls. Obviously, you've got to think about the social distancing, making sure that everything's clean. If you're sharing any balls or, you know, touching shuttlecocks, that type of thing, make sure that they're sanitized, make sure that you've all washed your hands. And if you are going to have anything like yoga or Pilates, make sure everyone is changed already, because changing rooms are not allowed to be open yet. So they must be ready in their sports clothes. They must be aware of the fact that they've got to go home in order to change and shower. Try and avoid cash transactions if you're charging for your classes. Try and open the doors everywhere for ventilation. You may need to discuss with hirers about the capacity figures where the activity isn't static. So if you're moving around the room, then you need to start thinking about how that's going to be managed. Zumba is probably another big thing that people have been asking about. You need 100% fresh air for that. You can't use recirculated air. And the capacity of 100 square foot needs to be available per person. So I think Zumba is going to be one of those sort of harder things to do unless they do it outside. Also, for your dance and exercise, temporary floor markings are encouraged to be used. If you use something like chalk, it's something quite easy to get rid of, but it just makes it easier for the individual to know where their space is when they're doing their exercise. If you've got children going to any events, I'm sure some of you have found already that you're having to drop your child off at the door, wait outside to pick up your child. That's still going ahead, simply because if all the parents came into the hall where the children were, it brings the capacity figures up too high. And it's also difficult to manage as well. Now, another point that has been made is that instructors don't necessarily just run the class in your hall. They might actually go to several halls. And if that's the case, they've got to be really careful that they don't transmit COVID-19 from one hall to another. So actually, it's not a bad thing for you to ask the instructor how many different halls they go to and what they're doing to make sure that they're not going to transmit the COVID-19 from one hall to another. Darts. I don't know if anyone plays darts or snooker, but if you're in a small sort of youth club activity, something like that, and you bring your own darts, then that's absolutely fine. The governing body for snooker has published guidance for clubs, which will mean that some small community clubs will be able to open if you've got enough space. So you're looking at cleaning your cues and your balls, and you would also have to look to make sure that there's no bar open, which could make the social distancing difficult. And you'd have to consider the pubs and clubs guidance being applied. Air blown and fan heaters. A lot of people have asked whether these can be used. When it's cold, you'll need a good working heating system. Don't consider going to air fans and that kind of thing, because it could actually be quite expensive at the moment to do. The government guidance not to use hand dryers was withdrawn because the risk was relatively slow, as I said to you earlier. And the same principle could apply to fan heaters. And if the air intake is outside the building, then the risk goes down even more. The government says energetic exercise, for example, Zumba, requires 100% fresh air ventilation because the droplet transmission is more of a risk when you're doing energetic activity. So if you're doing nice, sedate exercise, such as Pilates or yoga, then these exercises will be lower risk. Zumba will be more of a risk. So it might actually be in your favor not to have Zumba at all for the moment. Carpets, Pilates, yoga and carpets. That might seem a strange mix, but it's basically, if you've got a carpeted hall, it's a good idea to ask everybody to bring their own mats so that they're not actually putting their body directly onto the carpet. So you don't need to change the flooring, just think about your risk assessment. So make sure that everybody is well that comes to the hall. Make sure that you do your social distancing, hand cleaning, using tissues, cleaning different surfaces. If they've got their own mats and they use their sanitizer before starting the class, and make sure there's some ventilation, so open some windows, then you should be okay. Of course, if somebody does develop COVID-19, then you are going to have to close the hall for 72 hours. Or you could clean the carpet. And then fogger machines. Now, there's been quite a bit of talk about these as well. These are the machines that, rather than you having to wipe down every single surface, they go into the room and they spray a very fine spray of the sort of antiviral disinfectant stuff. Now, larger venues are using them, and so are ambulances. But it really hasn't been considered or talked about very much about how somebody with asthma could cope with those chemicals. So the main risk with COVID-19 is the airborne droplet transmission, whereas if you're touching something, if you're touching the carpet, is somebody likely to touch that same space on the carpet in 72 hours? Probably not. So it might still be worth just going down the route of hand sanitizing, making sure you've got your sanitizer at the front, making sure that you wipe down all of the surfaces, rather than sort of going down the route of a fogger machine for the moment, because they are quite expensive. Government guidance. This is about preschools. Preschools no longer have to keep children in small, consistent groups. They can go back to normal group sizes, but if they're different age groups, you should try and keep, say, the 5-year-olds in one section of the building and, say, 6-year-olds in another section of the building, and try not to mix them. So that's rather good. Your exercise classes, again, no more than 30 in a class. Well, I have to say that does sound rather a lot to me. Says one who doesn't do that much in the way of exercise classes. WI meetings, the WI have actually got some really, really good information. They've really looked at how they're going to meet and whether to cancel meetings, because they've had to consider that an awful lot of their members are over the age of 70. So they've thought about it a lot. Cleaning before booking. So is it enough to include adequate cleaning as a condition of your hire, or do we need to clean the hall after each booking? And I can understand a lot of people being concerned about this, because if they haven't got the volunteers to do that, they might have to have somebody in that's a professional cleaner. So it's difficult. Not all halls can clean, so hirers can be asked. And you could always tell them that you'll do a spot check to make sure that they are doing this. Also, you should tell the hirer that you have your own cleaning regime, and they should know what that is so that they can supplement where they need to. PPE. The minimum PPE to be worn for cleaning an area after someone has had symptoms is a disposable gloves and an apron. And then make sure that you've washed your hands really, really thoroughly after you've removed all of your PPE items. And first aid boxes. They've been talking about having a COVID-19 first aid box. You need the COVID first aid box as well as your normal first aid box. And if anybody needs to use any items in either box, make sure that they have somewhere that they can let you know that they have used items in it, so that you can replace them. And that should be something that's standard anyway, but it's just a reminder. Then we've got what happens if you want to have some sort of a wedding party or a wake or anything like that. If it's a sit down, then you can have 30 people, but with social distancing in place. Can't have any loud music, no dancing, although I wouldn't expect to see dancing at a wake, and do the social distancing as well. and try and create a one-way system so that people are using the same paths to go in and out and they're not bypassing each other. And the next two slides that you're going to see on my PowerPoint are useful links. Now, I've actually given 2 slides to the useful links because there are so many of them. So you've got things like your sport and gym leisure facilities, things to do with the multi-purpose community facilities, which you are, the out-of-hours clubs. Who have you got here? You've got guidance about the WI, outdoor exercise. And I've also put in the Dorset Council Outbreak Control Plan PDF as well, so that you can see what Dorset Council are going to do should we have another spike and we have to close down. So that's there for you. And the other thing was that I don't know what Dorset Council Environmental Health is going to do about this yet, but sometimes you can now go to Environmental Health to ask advice on local gatherings, because the government has devolved the power down to the local authority. I can't see anything on the Dorset Council website yet, but it may be that because it's quite a new thing, they haven't had the opportunity to put it up there yet. But as soon as we know what those updates will be, we will let you know. And now we come to our questions. So, if you remember last time, we had Deborah Clark, who is the Rural Evidence and Village Halls Manager at ACRE. And ACRE stands for Action with Communities in Rural England, and that's the national voice for our 38 member organisations who make up the country's largest rural network. So if you can imagine, all around the country, we are constantly asked different questions because different areas have different issues. And in total, ACRE reaches 52,000 grassroots organisation in 11,000 rural communities. That's a huge amount. Bernard Hammock is the director at Hallmaster, and he has a fabulous online hall and venue booking system, which is reliable and easy to use online. And it's a good reservation system for church halls, village halls, clubhouses, community centres, and lots of other bookable function rooms. And there are lots of people in Dorset that already use it. So I'm sure that plenty of those that do use it could say how they find it. Bozina Bien is the director at Allied Westminster Insurance. And Allied Westminster are one of the main market leaders in village hall insurance. And their village guard policy covers assets worth billions of pounds for thousands of halls throughout the UK, and has been going since its launch in 2006. So I think we can consider that to be a very well-established insurance company with that village hall speciality. And then there are the questions. When we asked you to book on, we said, if you had one burning issue to ask the panel, what would it be? And my goodness, I got a considerable amount of different questions. Some I hope I've answered already in my presentation, but these are questions that I didn't have covered. So the first one is, how do we facilitate a consensus between people who want to stay closed in all circumstances and those who want to reopen and provide a meeting point for the village? So I think this is going to be more a sort of a view of how you feel this is going to work. Shall we start? Now, unfortunately, I can't see anybody because I'm sharing my screen, but I'm hoping Deborah's still there.
Yeah, I'm still here. I haven't run away.
So what would you do? There are going to be plenty of people that are going to say, nope, we don't want to open our hall at all. And there are others that are going to say, well, actually, I think it would be a good idea to start reopening.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was an interesting question because I wasn't quite sure when I read the question whether you meant a consent, whether you meant that the committee were falling out, well, not falling out, but hadn't come to an agreement of whether they should open the hall, or whether the committee wanted to open it and people in the community wanted it to stay closed because they were concerned about people coming into the community. So, I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? The committees are the trustees of the hall. They're responsible for the finances and management. So it's their decision, and they need to do their risk assessments and weigh up the risk between them. I suppose the most important thing is, you know, if the committee themselves are perhaps older and vulnerable and some have been shielding, they might not want the responsibility, or perhaps it's that they're finding hires of the hall being particularly difficult. I think it's a really hard question because everybody's going to have different views. At the end of the day, the committee are going to have to agree between themselves and make the decision whether they want people in their hall. I mean, they might, maybe they could come to a compromise and have I don't know, 2 activities a day, which means it's not so busy, so there's not so many concerns. I don't know. Do you have a view?
Sorry, thank you, Deborah. Just saying, I think we've only had a small bit of experience from this recently, and it's, I think, basically down to supply and demand. And it's obviously depending on the size of the venue too, and whether it really badly needs the income. Obviously, as with the grants going around, that's clearly helped sort of bridge the gap a bit. But it's down, I think, just from our experience, it's just down to supply and demand and whether they need the income. And of course, it goes out saying, you know, it needs to be viable for them to open. If it's going to be a lot of hassle, in inverted commas, abiding by the guidelines for maybe one hirer, then yeah, it's going to be questionable, I think.
And Bozina?
From insurance point of view, every insurance company actually wants the halls to open, wherever you're with. However, it needs to be done safely. So again, it's entirely your decision how you open, what you do. But please bear in mind that the longer you stay closed, the more difficult it may become to reopen, because it's unlikely that the COVID situation is just going to disappear and go away quickly. So possibly we don't expect anybody to open fully and have the halls full. But it's a very good idea to be able to open in limited amount whenever you can. Also, check whoever you're insured with. If you are with us, full cover is extended up to the end of August. And after that, we will need to know if you're still closed, and each case will be looked at on its own merit. Different insurance companies might be different because you always have got the unoccupancy clause that actually comes in if the hall is closed, usually for either 30 or 45 days. This is well over, but almost every insurance company have extended the cover. Some of them already lapsing that extension on the 5th of August, others end of August, and each company is different. But we don't want any hall to open only to have the insurance cover in place. It is your decision, it is your safety and the safety of the trustees and community that has to come first. But probably opening even once a week or twice a week for a small group is better than totally closing it for very long periods of time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to pick up on what you're saying there, I think that's a good idea, is using the guidelines to create some sort of staged opening. So you can do it in steps. And again, obviously, you've got various people saying, well, we want to come in. Well, under the current guidelines, you're not able to, but it just shows the local community that you are intending to open for business again. And okay, it may not be their time to be able to use the venue at the moment, but at least it shows that you are, you know, still wanting to open the venue. It's not just the shutters are down and that's it.
Thank you. This is a very quick question. I think I may have covered it. Confirmation, please. badminton and table tennis still not currently permitted? Shall I go to Deborah for that one?
Yeah, I think you answered that one. It is now permitted. I think it was permitted from the 25th of July.
Okay, thank you. And then the next one, this is, we've had inquiries. A lot of people are now starting to think about holding wakes again. So there's confusion about the numbers that are allowed to meet in the hall. They're not opening until September the 1st, but they're assuming that 30 people would be allowed to attend the wake. Their hall is 108 square metres. And is it correct that each household would have to keep apart from other households? So it's the up to 30, and do each household have to keep apart from others? And again, I think I've probably covered that as well.
I think you have, and I think that's really what the situation has been. Obviously, if your hall is too small to have 30 people properly social distanced, then you couldn't have the 30 people. But other than that, yes, you've already answered it, I think. But I think the government is trying to avoid mass gatherings. I think that's their intentions, really.
Okay. Does the ceiling figure of 30 people applied elsewhere apply here? And does it include hall staff?
Yes, it does. It's 30. I'm not sure about hall staff. That's something I'd have to look into. But as far as I'm aware, if it was a wedding and you've got the staff, I don't know, serving refreshments, then it would include those people. If you've got a hall manager who's in an office down the corridor, well, then they wouldn't be included in the 30. So as far as I'm aware, it's 30 people in the room where the activity's going on. So to me, that would include staff.
Okay. Bernard or Bozina, do you have anything to add?
Not particularly, no. I think it's continually confusing because things are changing all the time. So I can understand why people are asking questions. It sort of reminds me of the algebra questions I used to get at school, trying to work it all out. But, maybe a flow chart or something like that might be a bit easier to understand, where people can follow a guide. Do you have this amount of space? Do you have how many people? But yeah, it's quite difficult, but I don't have any further comment there.
Okay, Bozina?
Good idea to have a good 2.5 meters measuring stick. And I mean 2.5 meters because the half is for the person itself, because we take some space. So whenever you go to the hall, don't just think about the 30, think where those people will be sitting. And also you will have a situation where in a wake or from the 1st of August wedding, some people can sit closer because they're part of the same household. Yeah. But just do a play in the hall with that big stick and find out how that actually works and work out.
Of course, the other issue, 1st of September is a little way away, so it may be that it's changed again by then. Yeah. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, we have a very optimistic person here who would like to know, how soon can we get groups of 100 plus back together again, inside or outside?
I have no idea. I don't have inside information on the government workings or civil servants' minds and scientific thinking. So 100 people is a lot unless you've got huge space. So I don't know if anyone else has any further inside information, but I don't.
No, I hadn't heard anything. As you say, I think it depends on the size of the venue. Of course, if you've got a really large open space that can cope with the social distancing, then fine. But I can't think of particularly many off the top of my head that would be able to accommodate that sort of number.
No, I don't know of many either. Zumba. Clarity on how much space exercise classes need to have. I have a funny feeling this is where we're going to wave the magic stick around. So is it 3 meters squared per person or 2 meters squared per person? Who fancies that one?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I looked at our information sheet and we've got a completely different number. which is, I don't actually think 2 meters is enough personally. It's energetic exercise, high impact exercise. You might need a 2 meter space to stand in, but you're going to be moving about and projecting. So I think our information sheet actually says 9.9 square meters because you're moving around. Now I couldn't check with my colleague who actually researched that before this session, so I will go away and check with her where she got that figure from. And there is a Zumba organisation, so yeah, I think we might have to. Zumba teachers must have their own guidance from their own national organisations, and that's something we've been telling, you know, halls that contact us, you know, short map bowls, for instance, go and talk to the guidance that your organisation is putting out. You're responsible. You know, they shouldn't be putting it all on the hall committee. So
No.
Zumba is something that I'm going to go away and come back to you on, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Unless anyone else is a Zumba expert and knows the answer.
Also, when it comes to Zumba, in most cases that activity is organized by an individual. So if you are allowing anybody with yoga, Pilates, Zumba, anything like that to your hall, ask for the copy of the insurance, please. This is to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Some of your policies might have that written in small print that you have to do that. In our case, it isn't, but for your own protection, ask for a copy of the insurance, because if anything happens where they do something wrong, please believe me, the claim will come first to you as village hall trustees, not to them. And that's what we have always seen in the past. And it's only them, up to the trustees, to redirect that claim to the hirer, and in all those cases, the commercial hirer. So your policy will definitely not cover that. And you want the details of the insurance before anything happens, rather than trying to the details after something happens.
Can I come back in on that? Not necessarily about the insurance, but just about sort of the liability and insurance, not insurance, about liability and responsibility. The regulations, the government regulations over COVID actually say that the person organising the activity is the responsible person for that activity. The village hall committee is responsible for making sure the village hall is COVID secure, but the person running the activity is the person that's responsible for what happens in that activity. Within our revised information sheet, there's a small section that tries to sort of be reassuring and help you understand where the government thinking is coming from. So I've extracted that and given it to Jo, and she's going to share it with everyone. While I'm just rambling on about our information sheet, a quick point that I thought I would make. I don't know how many of you are familiar with PDFs, but if you can't find something, if you go into the document and click Control and F, you'll get a little box up and you can type a word in. So say you're trying to find out about chairs, just type chairs into that little box and it will come up with an arrow, so you can go to every single piece of information in that document about chairs. I think it's got quite a lot of information in it, and if you're scrolling through trying to find things, if you didn't know you could do Control and F for find, then yeah, there's a useful tool. I just thought I'd mention it. Sorry, Jo, I'm rambling on.
No, that's
okay.
That's a very, very useful information, particularly when you've got sort of 30 pages to get through. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Okay.
So we've gone from Zumba, which is that high impact activity. We now need to do something a little bit more restful.
Okay.
So what is the advice regarding users who play cards such as bridge or whist?
It's actually mentioned in our information sheet because the English Bridge Union apparently are advising bridge clubs against reopening for now. But we were thinking that an informal local group might be able to arrange social distancing if it's household groups that always play together, and they have played together or they have been recently. Maybe using slightly larger tables so that you're not so close together. Using new cards all the time or trying to clean them. So yeah, that was sort of our advice. But I think the Bridge Club Association is suggesting holding back.
Or litter
Yes.
pickers.
Yes, because you cannot, it's physically impossible to clean each card after use. So I can't wait for my bridge club to come back. But I can understand the issue with the bridge club advice, because physically, how can you clean card after a different person held it? So yeah, hard one. But like with dancing, two things that personally I long to come back to, and they're not coming back to.
Okay. Bernard, do you have any opinions on?
Only with the card thing. I don't play bridge, so I'm not completely familiar with what you can or can't do. But I think the only other thing would be for people to wear the thin plastic gloves, possibly, and then those could be disposed of and hands washed, and along with the cards at the end. I think that's really the only thing I can think of, to be honest.
Yes, thank you. Now, those hirers that aren't actually very keen on cleaning. So how do we deal with hirers who are ambivalent about the cleaning requirements we have put in place?
Right. Well, they obviously, as hirers, they should have a hiring agreement, and our information sheet has got special conditions about what they should be doing. They're organising the activity, so they're responsible for it. I suppose if they're not going to do what's requested of them, then you would do whatever you would normally do with a group that were misusing your hall. I presume that, you know, if someone's coming into your hall and, I don't know, breaking things or I don't know, hitting balls against windows or whatever some groups, you know, might do, then yeah, I think you just follow your normal procedures and talk to people and give them warnings that if they don't, that, you know, this is really important that they clean, they're using your hall, and if they don't do it, then they will get a warning to leave and not be able to hire the hall anymore.
Yeah,
normal procedures, I think.
Yeah, Deborah's absolutely correct, and something we found recently is where people have got their normal standard terms and conditions. They've either been updating those to include sort of COVID regulations and expectations, or they've been issuing a separate guideline as to what their obligations are. And as long as they've completed the form and signed it, or in using our system, they complete that online, you've got a record of it. But I think it really is a question of highlighting their obligation to what it is they need to do with regards to cleaning or any other activity in the venue. And if they're not prepared or not, you know, willing to do that, well, then they just can't come in. It's not part, you know, they haven't accepted your terms of use, so they'll just have to not turn up. And again, it can be done in such a way without sort of too heavy-handed an attitude, but you know, they just need to know why you're doing it, and it's you know, if you want to say it's beyond your control, it is, because it's you know, it's a national thing, and it's according to the guidelines from the government. It's nothing that you're enforcing particularly just because you want to. They just need to know their obligations, I think.
Brilliant, thank you. Rosina?
And ask for a copy of the insurance.
Yep.
As simple as that. That usually puts fear into everybody.
Can I just add, Joe? It was a query that came up recently from another village hall, and the advice I'd probably add to that is, if we're asking for risk assessments from our hirers and we're keeping a copy of it, I would make that one of the first points of contact, to go back and inform them that they're in breach of their own risk assessment, which makes them liable. And remember, somebody doesn't have to catch COVID-19 at risk of being put at risk of harm is in breach of their risk assessment. So that idea of having to prove that they caught COVID-19 from that activity is not really the issue, because nobody really probably would be able to do that. But what they would be able to show is that they were put at risk of. So that's really where I would take people back to. And then I think really, if you point out to the hirer that they're at risk of breaching their own risk assessment, I think they'll probably take you quite seriously on that.
Good point.
Brilliant, thank you. Many village halls have Moviola, which is the cinema for village halls. I feel that village halls can go ahead and use Moviola again, as long as they stick to the capacity and maximum 30 number. What do you feel? Should we go to Deborah?
I think, again,
Bernard,
I think again, it just goes down to the size of your venue and the ability to host those people within the guidelines, again, within the distancing. I think that's probably about as plain and simple as it can be, I think.
I suppose one issue might be, ventilation. You don't want to go around closing all the curtains and shutting all the windows, do you?
No, that's a good point. Rosina?
Yeah, the same.
Yeah.
Spacing, you would need to definitely pre-book. So you will need to know exactly how many people are coming, rather than, as in most cases, people will just turn up on a night. So you don't have a situation where you have to turn a lot of people away. But yes, again, down with the big stick and more than the 2.5 meters minimum, because you need to allow for the person in the middle, and obviously have the details of everybody that is there for track and trace.
Lovely,
yeah, I was just had a thought. I mean, I don't know how Moviola, how the system actually works, but I was just thinking about taking cash. I know a lot of halls are thinking about using contactless payments where they've obviously got the bandwidth to do it, and using things like SumUp and iZettle, which is handheld, so people can pay online.
Okay. Now this question is just for Bernard. I have been asked to ask you, Bernard, please could you explain the mechanics of Hallmaster for those that don't use it?
Yeah, sure. So I've got a sort of 90-second video which I'll show you, just tells you all about it. But essentially, Hallmaster is an online booking and invoice management system. It allows you to have multiple administrators with different roles, so you can take booking requests and manage all your current bookings, any recurring regular bookings online. So if anybody's ill or away anytime, then one of the other administrators can always step into your shoes. It gives details in real time, and so it's also a way of promoting what's going on at your hall at the same time. So there's loads of other bits and pieces to it, and I'm more than happy for you to give us a call or email us later on. I'll get my contact details into the main chat. And I think Rachel's going to share this video later on if it doesn't work on your computer for any reasons, but I'll just run it now, and then I'll field any questions after that if I can find it.
If people can put any questions they have for Bernard in the chat, please.
Right, okay. So,
your venue is a great place for play days, work days, or the big day. But managing the day-to-day isn't easy. Not when your time is spent juggling people, paperwork, phone calls and payments. Fortunately, there's Hallmaster, an online booking and invoicing platform for halls and venues of all kinds. Because Hallmaster is a cloud-based platform, there's no irritating software to install. Just hop online on any device, and daily backups and top-notch security ensure your data and privacy is always protected. With Hallmaster, you can easily manage customers, bookings and invoices from one control panel, and there's no limit to the number of bookings or administrators you can have. So, you can finally get everyone and everything involved in managing your place in one place. You can even integrate Hallmaster right into your website, giving customers a reliable calendar of events that instantly updates and displays the availability of your spaces in real time, so customers can book anytime. No more phone chasing, unnecessary paperwork, or dreaded double bookings. If you need a little help, or a lot, our friendly UK-based support team is just an email or phone call away. And best of all, we don't take commission on any bookings, ever. So whether you're managing one room or multiple venues with room to spare, join thousands of people booking better every day with Hallmaster. Start your free 90-day trial at hallmaster.co.uk.
Okay, well, thank you for your time listening to that. So yeah, basically we do an annual license to use the system, which starts at £137 for the booking. It's £187 for the booking and invoicing, but that includes telephone and email support, any upgrades to the system, and daily regular backups as well. But I'll get off my selling box, and I'll get Rachel to post the link to that video again if you want, if it's a bit quick for you. But please feel free to give us a shout if you want to have any more information or set up a trial.
Lovely.
Or ask any questions in the chat and we can pick them up from there.
Lovely, thank you, Bernard. Are there any questions in the chats that are burning?
I can't see any at the moment, but if they
No,
do.
I don't think so.
No, okay. So we'll pick up any later on if they come up.
I think there's one about pricing.
Yeah. So the pricing, again, I'll put a link to our pricing page, but essentially it starts at £137 for the year for just the booking system. If it's booking and invoicing, which gives you the ability to track payments and gives you loads of reports about projected income and occupancy rates, all those sorts of things which usually needed at the year end or each quarter. That's all available. That's £187. And then we also do a multi-venue license. That's for sort of town councils and bigger organisations that have multiple venues under one account. And again, we can give you a price on that depending on how many venues you have. But I'll send a link to Rachel and get that included in the information as well.
Brilliant, thank you very much indeed. So our next question, given that we're also starting to think about coffee mornings and that kind of thing, what are the rules for reopening hall kitchens or catering? When and how?
Okay. Kitchens are allowed to be open. We do have the advice about kitchens in our information sheet. There's quite a lot of things that you need to think about apart from ventilation and cleanliness and wearing face coverings. How do you organise people coming up to a serving hatch? Do they come one at a time? Can they come in their household groups? So there's that sort of thing to think about. And there's also a difference between you just having a kitchen where the committee's managing teas or coffees, or where you might be a registered food business with your local authority. So if you're a registered food business, you'll need to take account of the Food Standards Agency, and they have quite a useful checklist on their website. And also, of course, there's all the guidance. I don't know what that background noise is, not mine. There's also government guidance on pubs and restaurants and that sort of thing, so that would need to be taken into account. I don't have anything else to add to that.
Rosina?
Just to let you know that obviously the food hygiene guidance and the FSA safe method checklists do apply to village halls the same way as they would apply to any business. So just because you are charity or not-for-profit organization, it doesn't mean that all the health and safety rules that apply to businesses don't apply to you. They do. So please go and check those sites and see what you need to do. The HSC website does actually offer quite clear and well-written advice.
Lovely, thank you. Can personal one-to-one dance trainers start to use our hall again?
There's lots of stuff out there about dancing, isn't there? Dancing can start again. Dance classes. You can't have communal dancing, so you can things like discos or a rave or something. So with I haven't looked closely into the guidance for dance teachers, but I'm trying to use my common sense here. But if a teacher is teaching dance classes and there's a couple, and they're dancing together, then maybe there's not a problem with that. But then how do you get around the room with social distancing? Yeah, I don't know. I think I would need to go away and look at some more guidelines on dancing. I know Virginia's into dancing. She might know more about it from a personal point. I don't know.
Yes. From a personal point of view, it's not easy, and at the moment, is the dance in couples, no, and we can't see that happening. The trial might start in September in fixed couples where you live together, but the details are not still clear. When it comes to other classes, things like line dancing is already happening, but outdoors in small group of 6. It may come indoors in September, but there is still a lot of confusion on the dance forums and the again, going back to guidelines, because it just isn't simple, because when you're dancing, you're moving around, you're not staying in one place, so that's a lot more difficult.
Lovely, thank you. Bernard, do you have any insight into dancing? You're on mute, Bernard.
Sorry about that. No, I don't particularly. Again, apart from the usual guidelines of ventilation and distancing, etc., which obviously we just keep going over. But no, I have no other insight into dancing, I'm afraid, Joe.
Okay, thank you. The next one is a bit vague, so I'm going to take this as meaning outdoor community spaces. The question is, when do you envisage the reopening of community spaces?
Aren't they open already from the 25th of July?
I would have said so.
Yeah, I think playgrounds are. So yeah, they're open. So
yes,
if it's a playground, it's quite hard, isn't it? You can't go around sanitizing swings and slides, but I think gates and that type of thing I think it needs to be thought about. It's about the way people circulate around the space, and parents that are taking children are responsible, so for looking after the children, and yeah, so yeah, as far as I'm aware, community spaces are open.
I'm just making sure that you've got the right signage up.
Yes, yeah, signage is good.
Yeah, we did actually provide on one of our updates. We did provide us specifically email to all of our clients who do manage playgrounds with the relevant links, what to do. So that does exist. Is again not simple and easy.
I've only got one more question. You'll be glad to hear. So the last question is, what rights does one have on enforcing the policies? So, for example, if you've got someone that's booked the hall and they haven't cleaned it, we've already touched on this actually, haven't we? We've said that basically you could be refused access to the hall again. And I think that's pretty much the only thing that anybody can do, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the previous question about users that are abusing and not cleaning. And yeah, I think the panel and Paula made some really good points about that already. So yeah, I'm not sure. I think we'd just be going through the same stuff unless someone else has got something else to add. I
think the only thing that we've sort of come across a couple of times is where it's all very well somebody signing their terms and conditions to say yes, we promise to abide by everything, and but when it actually comes to cleaning, they don't necessarily do a very good job or don't do what is expected of them. So I think it's really important within the terms and conditions, again, that it's made very clear as to what is expected of them with regards to cleaning, etc. Again, this is why we've found quite a few venues have started having a sort of subsidiary set of terms and conditions relating specifically to the COVID-19 situation. And within those, we've seen, they've shared them with us, details about, you know, how to clean, what to clean, who's meant to be cleaning, with regards to, without stealing Bozaina's thunder, the insurance, etc. But it's really, you know, crucial, I think, because if someone says, oh yes, that's fine, we're going to clean it, and then actually they miss a crucial part, then it's going to make things very difficult, because the trustees or administrators are going to have to then approach those people, and that's, I think, is where, you know, if the communication hasn't been done properly in the first place, it's going to make life difficult for both parties, really.
Mm.
Okay, just to go on that one, what I actually found is what the government line exactly says: failure to complete a risk assessment which takes account of COVID-19, or completing a risk assessment but failing to put in place sufficient measures to manage the risk of COVID-19 could constitute a breach of health and safety law. So what that means is whole management are responsible for oversight what happens in the whole. Those breaching government guidelines could be breaking the law, and therefore that's a legal matter, and it could lead to prosecution. It is not up to the whole management to take the law into your own hands. That you cannot do. You could ask those responsible for breaches to cease or leave, but any breaches in law or anything, any aggression is a police matter, is not something that village halls can actually really deal with, and hopefully none of you will have to deal with, because it's actually very unpleasant and difficult situation to be with. So I hope you all have fantastic hires that totally understand what you do and why you do, and will actually comply.
Thank you. Well, as that was the last question, I would just like to say thank you ever so much to Deborah Clark from ACRE, from Bernard Hammock at Hallmaster, and Bozaina Bien at Allied Westminster for taking the time to answer these questions this morning. And if there are any questions that come up on the chat, are you happy for us to forward them to you?
Yes, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is Anita, and she's going to give you a quick funding update.
Well, actually, I thought if Ian's still here, I'd go straight to Ian so he could give us a quick update on the Dorset Council Innovation Fund that is about to open. So I'm going to hand over, because I'm sure everybody wants to hear that more than what I have to say. Well, not, yeah. Anyway, so Ian, if you're there, please,
I'm
could
still
you?
here, yes.
Excellent. Could you just give everyone an update on what's happening with the council funding?
Hi, yes, thanks Anita. Thanks everyone for inviting me today. I'm just going to give a quick heads up, so I'll be very, very brief, so I'm aware of the time. Dorset Council Community Impact Fund Coronavirus Support Round 5. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful. So it's a small grants programme aimed at recovery and reset and dealing with the impact of coronavirus for registered charities, voluntary and community organisations, and also some local micro groups that perhaps don't have the normal governance in place. So we think that's really key for some of those local groups that have been doing fantastic work in their communities in the last sort of 4 or 5 months. Just to give you the basics, really, that hopefully the fund will launch on midnight this coming Sunday, which is the 2nd of August. And if you're looking at applying, you've got about 6 weeks with the funding window closing on midnight Sunday, the 20th of September. So you've got plenty of time to put an application in. In terms of the amounts that are available, if you're a registered charity or if you're a constituted group, you can apply for up to £5,000 for your activities, providing they meet the fund criteria and the priorities. For those sort of smaller micro groups that don't have the usual governance, perhaps they've only been in place for sort of 6 months, you can apply for up to £1,000. But what we would ask you with your application is that you will need to identify a referee for your activities in your group, and that organisation would need to endorse your project or activities, and they would need to manage the funds on your behalf. In terms of the focus of the fund, as I've just said, I mean, it's I would direct you to the guidance, which I'll send the link through to you, Anita and Joe, and then you can send that out to everybody. But effectively, in a nutshell, we're looking at supporting activities that are focused on supporting disadvantaged and vulnerable people and groups who have been affected by COVID-19, and we want to sort of help them back into recovery between sort of September and March. So with decisions being made at the end of September, you would need to be looking to deliver your activities with the funding, if you are successful, for about 4 to 6 months. So we'd want you to spend that funding by the end of March 2021. The application process is online, and again, there will be links from our Dorset Council webpage on the communities site. There will be full guidance on that webpage, and you'll be able to go in and click on a button and apply online. Unfortunately, we're not taking any paper applications, I'm afraid, for obvious reasons. In terms of village halls, yes, you can apply village halls, community facilities. There are some exclusions. I mean, I can mention a few. The funding won't cover loss of income from hirers. We're not able to fund normal running costs for your village hall or community centre. Repairs, refurbishment of facilities that are ongoing or that you've got planned, unfortunately, we won't be able to cover those. So if you're looking at funding for sort of pitches or multi-use games areas, or your car park, or you need landscaping or some repairs to your roof, unfortunately, we won't be able to cover those. Those aren't eligible. However, just to give you a few examples, if your village hall, if you need to make some small adaptations to your facility to be a little bit more focused on recovery going forwards, it could be some screens, it could be some safety equipment, cleaning regimes, hygiene support, PPE, those sorts of things. Those are eligible. As are, you may well have you'll have some links with some local groups that are doing some good work and activities. My voice is going, apologies. You may well have links with some local groups that are doing some fantastic work with those members in your community that are most at risk, they're vulnerable. And again, it might well be that they apply on their own, or maybe you do something with them. I've rushed through this quite quickly. I think I've covered most things. I will send out more details. There'll be an awful lot of information coming out either on Friday or first thing Monday morning next week. And I think I've covered most things on there. Oh, and just to say, we have, just to give you an idea, it is capital and revenue funding. So if you need to buy some items, that's fine, you can include that. It can be either or both. And I think we've got approximately £110,000 to allocate for this current round, which is round 5.
Thank you very much, Ian. And just to say, Ian, you're coming back next week, aren't you? To give
I'm coming
a bit
back
more
again. Yes,
so
I'm
if
coming back
people want
again.
a bit more of an in-depth detail once the guidance has been released, then please do join us again next week.
Yep.
For a bit of a more in-depth follow-up. I'm very conscious of time and that some people are having to leave. So I was going to give a very quick funding update. But the slides I was going to show are already on the DCA webinar page. They've been uploaded by Ray. So I'm just going to mention 3 things, and then I'm going to pass on to Paula for some closing comments. Now, the first thing is there was a tweet from NCVO this morning saying that the National Lottery Community Fund are expecting that their funds will run out on the 17th of August. So get your application in quickly to the National Lottery Community Fund. The other thing is, don't forget the other local fund that is available and open at the moment is from Dorset Community Foundation. Ellie was with us last week, so if you want to listen to last week's webinar and just hear it from her, there are 3 pots of money: £2,000 for emerging groups, £5,000 and £10,000 for sort of partnership work. So please, again, have a look at the Dorset Community Foundation website. And the third and final thing I'm going to say, although there is a bit more on my slide, so please look at the webinar page, is that there is a grassroots music fund that is open and is closing on the 3rd of August. It's an Arts Council fund, but they specifically mention grassroots, supporting grassroots music. So village pubs, village halls and community buildings are sort of recognised within that funding as being grassroots music providers or supporters, or venues is probably a better word. So again, the links in the website, it will probably be in the e-bulletin that is going, it will be in the e-bulletin that's going out tomorrow, as will the information about the Dorset Community, Dorset Council funds, all the funds basically, all the funds will be in the e-bulletin or on our funding page. That is extremely quick for me, but I know that we would, Paula just wants to say a few closing things, and there's a lot more information, or just get in touch with one of us. Thank you.
Lovely. Well, thank you for sticking with us. I just really wanted to say, as we're moving out of the crisis stage of this, it's a good opportunity to reevaluate whether you're meeting the needs of your community. As you start to wonder about what new customers you might have to replace other ones that aren't ready to come back yet, how you make your hall sustainable, it's a good starting point. Last week we did a webinar on digital inclusion, and I have to say I think this is a growth area and one that all community buildings and village halls should be looking at as part of their planning. Do you have, for example, broadband in your village hall? I imagine you do. Well, there will be people in your community that don't have access to broadband. What about a free Wi-Fi Tuesday to bring people in that wouldn't normally come to your village hall? There are opportunities out there, purchasing a couple of laptops that you can make open access to your community. By doing those sort of things, we tackled 2 of the biggest issues around digital exclusion, which is access to the technology and access to broadband. And then the last point that I really wanted to make was we also had a really great presentation about digital champions. They are angels, but digital champions. And that really made me think about the skills that we all have. We tend to underplay our own digital skills. But if you can use email, your internet banking, you can shop online, then you are ahead of a large proportion of the population that struggles with those things. You already have skills that you could be sharing with others. If you can't do those things yourself, or members of your team or your trustee board or whoever can't, then this is an ideal opportunity to upskill. And the digital champions can work with you as an organisation to improve your skills so that you can improve the skills of your community. And last week I said to people, perhaps the voluntary sector could make a pledge to actually improve our skills in order to be able to improve the skills of our community. We'll make sure that that telephone number for the digital champions is available as part of the chat, so that if you want to get involved in that project, you can. And I can't recommend it enough. And it is a great new avenue for potential revenue for your village hall or community building. As I started by saying, this has been a really difficult time, but it's also been quite an extraordinary time, one of community action, collaboration and support. And really, let's make this a jumping off point, a starting point for the sort of communities that we want, more cohesive, more self-sufficient, more self-sustaining. And we do that by making sure that we're meeting the needs of our community. And that's what you do every day. So thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the keenness that you have to come back and for the services that you provide for your community. And let's continue working collaboratively together to make Dorset as cohesive a community as it possibly can and as inclusive as it possibly can. So thank you for your time today. Thank you very much to Deborah and to Bernard and Bazina. You all moved about on the screen. I was going to wave to you, but you can't see me do that, so I'll just wave generally. So thank you to all of our guest speakers and to Ian as well for sticking with us. We came to Ian probably a little bit later than we would have liked. And I suppose I should do a quick shout out as well to Jo for her update, and also for Anita managing to fit her slides into, I think that was about 1.25 minutes, Anita, well done. So thank you again for your time today, and hopefully we'll see you all next week. Take care of yourselves, take care of your communities. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.